Your words are the foundation of how people perceive you. Every time you open your mouth, you tell the world what kind of person you are, what you believe in, and how much control you truly have over yourself. Most people think that speaking more makes them look confident. But the truth is, confidence is measured by what you don't say. The more you talk, the more room you leave for misunderstanding, judgment, and doubt. But when you learn to control your words, when you understand the value of silence, you start to project power without even trying. There's a reason the calmest person in the room usually has the most influence. They don't rush to explain themselves. They don't try to convince anyone to understand them. They simply speak with clarity and precision, and then they stop, because they know this: words are energy, and once spoken, that energy cannot be taken back. When you over-explain your intentions, your pain, or your plans, you dilute the power behind them. You start giving people the chance to question your motives, to analyze your weaknesses, or to misinterpret your meaning. That's why learning to be intentional with your words is not just a skill. It's a form of self-respect. Think about how many times you've told someone what you're working on, what your dreams are, or what's bothering you, only to regret it later. Maybe they didn't understand, maybe they didn't care, or worse, maybe they used it against you. Every unnecessary word you share is like giving someone a key to your mind. And once they have that access, they can influence your emotions, your focus, and your peace. You cannot control what people say or think about you, but you can control what you give them to talk about. The strongest people don't waste energy defending themselves. They let their actions speak. When you're constantly explaining, it's because you feel the need to be understood. But when you're grounded, when you know who you are, you realize that not everyone deserves an explanation. Not every detail of your life needs to be public knowledge. The people who matter will see your consistency. The ones who don't will never be convinced by your words anyway. Jefferson Fisher often says, silence isn't the absence of words, it's the presence of control. That control builds credibility. It makes people listen when you finally decide to speak, because when you talk all the time, your words lose weight. But when you speak with purpose, your silence becomes louder than noise. Every word carries gravity. Every sentence holds authority. You don't need to raise your voice. Your composure does the talking. The truth is, oversharing is emotional leakage. It's a sign that you're looking for external reassurance instead of internal validation. When you constantly narrate your life, your struggles, your plans, your emotions, you train yourself to depend on feedback, and that dependency kills growth, because not everyone wants to see you win. Some listen just to gather information. Some nod just to appear supportive. But the moment your silence grows, their control fades. So stop explaining every choice, every feeling, every plan. You don't owe anyone that kind of access. The people who truly respect you won't demand explanations. They'll trust your intentions. The more selective you are with your words, the more powerful your presence becomes. Speak less, and when you do speak, make it count. Because your words are not just sound, they're currency. Spend them wisely. When you master your words, you master how others perceive you. You stop reacting emotionally and start responding intentionally. You speak when it adds value, not when it fills silence. And in a world where everyone is talking just to be heard, the one who speaks with purpose becomes unforgettable. Your words should build trust, not tension, clarity, not confusion. And once you understand that you stop talking just to be understood, you start talking to make an impact. Privacy is peace, and peace is power. The moment you stop telling everyone what's happening in your life, you start to feel a kind of calm that can't be shaken by gossip, judgment, or comparison. In a world that constantly demands updates, where people feel entitled to know your every move, choosing to stay private becomes an act of strength. Because the truth is, not everyone who listens to your story wants to see you succeed. Some listen to compare, some to compete, and others simply to collect information. And when you let too many people into your personal world, you give them the ability to disturb your peace. There's a quiet kind of confidence that comes from keeping things to yourself. It's the calm that comes when you don't need to announce your goals, your pain, or your next step. When you're private, you take back control of your energy. You stop explaining what you're doing and start focusing on doing it. And that's where real progress happens, in silence, away from opinions, free from distractions. Privacy doesn't mean secrecy. It means protecting your space from noise that doesn't deserve to enter. It means recognizing that not everything needs an audience, not every success needs applause, and not every struggle needs sympathy. The people who share everything are often the ones who struggle the most with peace of mind. Because every time you open up about what's going on, you invite new voices into your life, opinions, judgments, and expectations that weigh on your spirit. You start living through the lens of others. You start questioning your choices based on how they might react. But when you stay private, you move differently. You make decisions based on your own truth, not public perception. You act with focus instead of fear. Jefferson Fisher often teaches that peace is not something you find, it's something you protect. And And protecting it begins with boundaries, especially verbal ones. When you stop telling people every detail, you create emotional boundaries that shield your heart from unnecessary chaos. You start to notice that your anxiety drops, your confidence rises, and your purpose sharpens. Because the less you explain, the more time you have to evolve. You're not wasting energy trying to convince others to understand your path. You're simply walking it. Privacy gives you room to grow without pressure. It allows your dreams to develop quietly until they're strong enough to stand in the open. Think about a seed. It doesn't grow in the sunlight, it grows in darkness beneath the soil. The same is true for you. The most powerful transformations happen when nobody's watching. When you protect your journey from the spotlight, you give yourself the grace to fail, learn, and rise without judgment. People often mistake loudness for progress, but real success rarely makes noise. The most grounded individuals, the ones who achieve greatness, aren't the ones broadcasting every detail. They're the ones working in silence, focused on the mission, not the attention. Because peace doesn't live in the approval of others, it lives in the quiet assurance that you're moving in the right direction. Privacy also teaches you discernment. It helps you identify who deserves access to your story and who doesn't. Not everyone you talk to is a confidant. Some are spectators. Some are opportunists. The more you reveal, the more ammunition you give others to misunderstand or misuse your truth. But when you guard your life carefully, you remain mysterious, and mystery commands respect. When people can't read you, they can't manipulate you. They can't anticipate your next move. And that unpredictability gives you power. Keeping your life private doesn't make you distant, it makes you disciplined. It means you've learned that peace is more valuable than attention. You stop chasing validation, you stop oversharing, and you start valuing silence as a form of self-care. Because peace isn't about escaping the world, it's about managing what you allow into it. And when you choose privacy, you're not hiding, you're protecting the parts of you that are still growing. The truth is, you don't owe anyone a story. You owe yourself peace. You owe your dreams protection. You owe your energy preservation. And the less you say, the stronger you become. Because silence doesn't mean you're not living. It means you're living on your own terms, without noise, without interference, and without permission. Silence commands power in a way words never can. The strongest person in the room isn't the one speaking the loudest, it's the one who doesn't need to. When you learn to be silent, you learn control. You gain the ability to observe, to understand, and to respond with precision instead of emotion. Silence is not emptiness, it's strategy. It's the space where wisdom grows and where real influence begins. Because when you speak less, people listen more. They lean in. They wonder what you're thinking. They respect your restraint. Most people speak to fill silence because silence makes them uncomfortable. They believe talking makes them appear confident, when in reality, it often exposes their insecurity. The person who can sit calmly in silence is the one who truly owns themselves. Silence is power because it cannot be argued with, it cannot be interrupted, and it cannot be misquoted. It's your unspoken way of saying, I don't need to prove anything. And that kind of presence, that unshakable composure, intimidates noise without saying a word. Jefferson Fisher teaches that silence is a form of communication, one that carries more weight than constant explanation ever could. When you stay quiet, you're not ignoring people, you're filtering energy. You're choosing to respond with intention rather than reaction. You're refusing to let emotion dictate your message. In moments of conflict, silence gives you clarity. It allows you to watch how others reveal themselves. Because when you stop talking, other people start showing their true colors. They fill the silence with truth they didn't intend to expose. There's a reason silence is associated with confidence. Confident people don't rush to prove they're right. They don't need to win every argument. They're secure enough to let their results, their actions, and their consistency speak for them. Silence removes the need to defend yourself against small minds and petty opinions. You don't need to correct every rumor or justify every choice. You just stay grounded, knowing time will speak louder than words ever could. The loudest noise in your life should come from your success, not your explanations. Powerful silence is not passive, it's deliberate. It's the art of restraint in a world addicted to reaction. When you stay quiet in the heat of emotion, you preserve your dignity. You protect your energy, you maintain control. Because once words are out, they can't be taken back, but silence gives you the advantage of time. It lets you think, breathe, and act from wisdom, not impulse. And that's what separates leaders from followers, the ability to pause, assess, and speak only when it truly matters. People respect those who don't overshare, who don't gossip, who don't reveal everything they think. Mystery builds respect. When you're unpredictable, when people can't guess what you say next, they start paying attention. Silence creates curiosity, and curiosity is power. It gives you the upper hand in relationships, in business, in every interaction. Because control of speech equals control of perception. You dictate how people experience your presence, not by what you say, but by what you choose not to. Silence also protects your inner world. It shields your peace from chaos. You don't absorb everyone's negativity, and you don't waste energy trying to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding you. You simply exist in quiet strength, and that calm becomes your armor. The world will always try to provoke you, to make you explain, defend, or react. But when you respond with silence, you win by refusing to play their game. The truth is, silence is a sign that you've mastered the need for validation. You no longer chase approval or recognition. You understand that real power doesn't shout, it whispers. You become the kind of person whose stillness demands attention. Because when you speak after silence, every word carries weight. Every sentence matters. People listen, not because you're loud, but because your silence made your voice valuable. Commanding power through silence isn't about staying mute. It's about speaking from strength, not insecurity. It's about knowing that presence doesn't require volume. And when you live this way, you become unshakable. You stop reacting to noise, you start creating impact. Your silence becomes your statement, your calm becomes your confidence, and your restraint becomes your greatest form of power. Energy is currency, and every word, thought, or emotion you spend is either an investment or a loss. Most people don't realize how much they waste their energy by constantly explaining, reacting, and sharing. They talk about everything happening in their life, their goals, their problems, their frustrations, and in doing so, they drain the very power they need to move forward. Energy is the fuel behind everything you do, and once you give it away too freely, you have nothing left to sustain your own growth. That's why protecting your energy isn't selfish, it's essential. Every conversation you have takes something from you. Every argument, every explanation, every unnecessary update, it all costs energy. You might think talking about your struggles helps, but most of the time, it just makes you relive them. It pulls you deeper into the emotion instead of freeing you from it. The more you talk, the more you spread your energy thin. And when your energy is scattered, your focus disappears. You stop building momentum because you're too busy managing the noise you created. Jefferson Fisher says, "The more you speak, the more you leak." And he's right. Every time you tell someone what's happening in your life, you open a channel that drains your emotional battery. Some people listen to you with empathy, but many listen with curiosity, not care. They take in your energy, your vulnerability, and your passion, but they give nothing back. And when you walk away, you feel tired, even if you can't explain why. That's because you've just made an emotional transaction with no return. Energy flows where attention goes. If your attention is always on explaining, venting, and updating, then your energy is always external. You're feeding everyone else while starving yourself. But when you redirect that energy inward, into discipline, work, and silence, it multiplies. You start to feel more centered, more confident, more in control. Because energy grows in stillness, it thrives in focus. It becomes unstoppable when it's not wasted on people who don't deserve it. You have to understand that not everyone is meant to hold your energy. Some people are emotional thieves. They'll pull your focus, your peace, and your drive just by being in your space. They'll make you second, guess your progress, doubt your worth, or question your path, and they'll do it subtly, often without meaning to. That's why it's your responsibility to protect your energy like it's sacred. Because it is. Your energy is the source of your creativity, your purpose, your strength. Once it's gone, so is your ability to stay consistent. When you stop oversharing, you stop leaking. You stop giving your emotional power away. You begin to realize that silence doesn't mean isolation, it means conservation. You're not hiding your story, you're preserving your fire. You're keeping your energy for the people, projects, and goals that deserve it. And that's where transformation happens, when your energy is no longer scattered across conversations that don't matter. Every successful person knows this truth. Your energy determines your direction. When it's spent on drama, gossip, or validation, you stay stuck. When it's invested in purpose, discipline, and growth, you move forward fast. Energy doesn't lie. It tells you exactly where your priorities are. If you feel drained, it's because you've been giving too much of yourself to things that don't give back. But once you start choosing peace over explanation, silence over reaction, you begin to feel lighter. You start to rebuild strength from within. There's power in keeping your energy contained. It builds momentum. It gives your dreams room to grow. When you don't announce every move, you keep your power close, like a flame protected from the wind. Every private effort becomes a quiet investment. Every moment of restraint becomes a deposit into your own growth account. And soon, that energy starts showing up in everything you do. Your confidence, your focus, your results. The moment you realize that your energy is your greatest form of wealth, you stop spending it carelessly. You become selective. You learn that not every message needs a reply, not every opinion deserves attention, and not every emotion needs expression. You choose peace over performance, focus over distraction, purpose over noise, because the man or woman who controls their energy controls their life. And once you master that, nothing and no one can drain you again. Learning the art of discretion is one of the most powerful lessons a person can ever master. It's the ability to know what to say, when to say it, and more importantly, what to keep to yourself. In a world that glorifies transparency and oversharing, discretion has become rare, yet it's one of the strongest shields you can carry. Because every time you choose silence over impulse, observation over reaction, you preserve your dignity, protect your peace, and maintain control over your narrative. Discretion is not about being secretive, it's about being wise with your words and intentional with your exposure. Most people don't realize that not everyone deserves access to their thoughts. Just because someone asks doesn't mean you have to answer. Just because someone is curious doesn't mean they're trustworthy. When you start understanding this, you stop volunteering information that doesn't need to be shared. You stop explaining yourself to people who haven't earned that privilege. You learn that the more you reveal, the more you risk misunderstanding, judgment, and manipulation. Discretion gives you power because it puts you in control of what others know and what they don't. Jefferson Fisher says, every time you open your mouth, you're negotiating your credibility. That means every word you speak carries weight. If you talk carelessly, people stop taking you seriously. If you speak with precision, people start to respect your voice. Discretion teaches you to pause before you respond, to filter before you reveal. You don't speak just to fill silence. You speak to deliver value. And when you start living with that mindset, your words begin to carry authority. Discretion also teaches emotional discipline. It reminds you that not every thought deserves expression and not every feeling requires validation. Sometimes silence is the best response you can give because it says more than any explanation ever could. When you're discreet, you control your emotions instead of letting them control you. You stop reacting impulsively. You stop revealing your weaknesses in moments of frustration. You become harder to read, harder to provoke, harder to manipulate. And that composure builds respect. The people who move with discretion often appear mysterious, but that mystery isn't an act, it's protection. It's the result of maturity. You don't need to prove your worth through words. You don't need to justify every action. You simply let your results and your behavior speak for themselves. People start to realize that you're not easily swayed, that you don't operate on emotion, and that you have boundaries they can't cross. That's the silent strength that comes with being discreet. There's also a peace that comes from not constantly sharing. You no longer live under the pressure of others' opinions because nobody knows enough to judge you. You don't need to perform for anyone. You can focus on your journey without interference. When people can't predict your next move, they can't sabotage it. When they don't know your struggles, they can't exploit them. And when they don't know your goals, they can't discourage you. Discretion protects your plans until they're ready to be seen. In relationships, discretion builds trust. It means you know when to listen instead of talk, when to observe instead of react. You become the person people feel safe around because you don't gossip, you don't leak information, and you don't use words recklessly. You earn respect not by how much you say, but by how wisely you speak, and that kind of presence carries weight wherever you go. Discretion doesn't mean being cold or distant. It means being intentional. It's the ability to balance openness with protection, honesty with restraint. You can be kind without being vulnerable, expressive without being exposed. Because wisdom isn't in how much you speak, it's in how much you withhold. The more you practice it, the lighter you feel, because you stop carrying the weight of unnecessary explanations. When you learn discretion, you learn self-control. You begin to understand that your voice is powerful and should never be used carelessly. You stop offering every detail of your life to people who haven't earned your trust. You start choosing silence not out of fear, but out of confidence. You realize that peace comes from privacy and that your greatest advantage is unpredictability. Because when people can't read your thoughts, they can't influence your direction. That's what makes discretion an art, and mastering it makes you untouchable. The final lesson Jefferson Fisher shares is about protecting your energy by mastering the art of selective silence. Not every battle deserves your response. Not every comment deserves a comeback. Not every person deserves access to your peace. The more you grow, the more you realize that silence is not weakness, it's strategy, it's control. It's the quiet power that allows you to rise above noise without losing your balance. Fisher teaches that silence isn't about disengaging from life. It's about choosing where your energy goes, who gets your attention, and what deserves your emotional investment. The truth is, most people drain themselves by reacting to everything around them. They argue with people who will never understand. They explain themselves to those committed to misunderstanding, and they waste time trying to prove what's already obvious through their actions. But silence gives you freedom. When you stop responding to every provocation, you stop being controlled by it. You stop letting external chaos dictate your inner state. You start protecting your focus, and that's when you begin to win in ways loud people can't understand. Jefferson often says, "Your peace is expensive. Don't spend it cheaply." That means you can't give away your calm to anyone who tries to stir conflict. You can't let negativity rent space in your mind. When you respond to every slight, you're trading peace for ego, and ego is never worth it. The power lies in restraint, in knowing you could react, but choosing not to. That decision separates strong minds from reactive ones, because while everyone else is busy talking, defending, and over-explaining, you're busy observing, planning, and growing. Silence also sharpens your intuition. When you stop filling the air with constant noise, you start hearing your own thoughts clearly. You start understanding people better, noticing patterns in their words and actions. Silence makes you more aware, more perceptive. You begin to realize who truly respects you and who only wants access to your energy. It's in those quiet moments that you gain the wisdom to move strategically instead of emotionally. People often confuse silence with passivity, but they're not the same. Silence isn't surrender, it's preparation. It's the moment you gather your strength, analyze the situation, and choose your next move wisely. A person who can remain calm and silent in chaos is dangerous, not because they're weak, but because they're in control. They don't need validation through arguments. They don't need attention through noise. Their actions speak in a language only results can translate. Silence also teaches you emotional independence. You realize you don't need to vent to everyone to feel better. You don't need to post every struggle online to feel seen. You learn to process privately, to heal quietly. You discover that your emotions are valid even if no one witnesses them. That kind of maturity gives you unshakable peace because you're no longer seeking external comfort for internal battles. You become self-contained, steady, and centered. The most peaceful people aren't those who have nothing going wrong. They're those who've learned not to react to every wrong thing. They choose peace not because life is calm, but because they are. Silence becomes their default, not out of avoidance, but out of wisdom. When someone tries to provoke them, they don't rise to it, they let the noise pass. They understand that silence is sometimes the loudest statement you can make. Jefferson's message is clear: when you protect your energy, you protect your power. Your silence keeps you unpredictable. Your calm keeps you focused. Your restraint keeps you strong. The moment you stop explaining yourself, stop arguing for your worth, stop reacting to every opinion, you gain back your freedom. You stop living reactively and start living intentionally. Because at the end of the day, silence is not about shutting the world out. It's about tuning yourself in. It's about hearing your own wisdom over the noise of others. It's about standing so firmly in your peace that no chaos can move you. And when you reach that level of inner stillness, you don't just survive, you lead, you influence, and you inspire. Not through words, but through presence. That's the power of silence. The final, most transformative lesson Jefferson Fisher leaves us with. In the end, Jefferson Fisher's message is not about isolation, it's about elevation. It's about rising above the noise of a world obsessed with talking, sharing, and proving. Every lesson he delivers leads to one simple truth: peace is found in privacy, and strength is built in silence. When you stop telling everyone what's happening in your life, you reclaim your power. You stop giving away your energy to those who haven't earned it. You begin to live intentionally, speaking only when it serves purpose, and staying silent when it protects your peace. The beauty of this philosophy lies in how it transforms you. You become grounded, not reactive. You observe more, understand deeper, and respond less. You stop fighting meaningless battles and start focusing on the ones that actually move you forward. You start to value your thoughts, your emotions, and your story enough to guard them carefully. Because not everything needs to be shared, not everyone needs to understand, and not every situation needs your reaction. This is the art of strength that Jefferson Fisher teaches, the kind that doesn't shout, doesn't chase, doesn't prove. It's the kind that stands quietly, unshaken, and sure of itself. When you learn to speak with purpose and move with discretion, you begin to walk differently. You carry a calm that confuses noise and a confidence that doesn't need to announce itself. In a world full of voices, be the one who speaks less but says more. In a world full of chaos, be the one who stands calm. And in a world full of exposure, be the one who values privacy. Because when you protect your energy, when you stop telling everyone what's happening in your life, you don't just create peace, you create power. And that power, once mastered, turns you into the kind of person who leads quietly, wins gracefully, and lives intentionally.